Mike, good to see you. I was just about to text everybody, but there you are. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Oh yeah, things are going all right. Yeah. How was your day?
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't hear you. I don't know what's, oh, that's because my speaker isn't working. Okay.
Okay.
Check my audio devices there. Test speaker.
Is it working now?
No.
Oh.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay. Good. How was your day?
Yeah, it was excellent. I just got done reading Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Rupa Goswami's 5.25 hour audio book. It's really, I actually was looking at one of Maitreya's posts and he was talking here, I'll show it to you. And that kind of inspired me to think about how to read this. Here is the post that he put. The whole Vedic adventure is to draw one's attention entirely into the lotus feet of Krishna without any diversion. That was like the mood that I read this whole chapter in. And it really helped me, you know. I mean, I'm kind of an impersonalist, I think, because I, you know, like a little bit of Santaras Gyan, you know, I'm not really, yeah, I'm aware of Krishna, but sometimes it doesn't seem like I have much of a personal relationship with him. But if I concentrate on Krishna, Krishna says, always think of me, you know. So let me share this screen here. We're all the way at text
71, I think.
71, yeah. All the devotees from New Vrindavan came to the program last night. I was ecstatic.
Yeah, I saw.
They I don't know if you saw it they posted a bunch of pictures of, you know, the dude upstairs, Mukunda, he is always a little late, and I got there and everybody was chanting in front of the door, you know.
Yeah, I saw there was a short video of that, and then there were some pictures, and then the live stream.
Yeah. They have a really expert videographer. His name is Braylon. I mean, he used to be there like a couple of years ago, but then he left and then he came back because Krishna never leaves you alone. And so yeah, he had two cameras. He had one like mine that I'm using. It's a Sony 4K handheld camera, and then he had for live streaming, he had an Android phone. So he was like doing two things at once. But he has some shotgun mics, you know, that he uses, which is good enough. They got good sound in that place, especially with the new equipment they got. So we're having a party tomorrow also at my house. If you're willing to come, that'd be great. You know, we have some good food. Free is good, right?
Yeah, I'm still not going places or around people other than work. Yeah.
No, that's all right. I understand. This whole variant thing is kind of worrying, you know, but the Delta thing is really, you know, they had like the other day, just last weekend, they had 14 people die in Butler alone at the Butler Hospital. And that's a little small town. It's crazy. And a few of them were even vaccinated, you know, that they had comorbidities like I do, but it happens. You have breakthrough cases, you know, and so you have to be really careful. At least they have mask mandate. I wish they had a vaccine mandate in that place. I really do. I suggested it. Nobody listened to me though. But everybody that's coming to my places, it has to have a vaccine and boost, full, fully vaccinated. Because it's my house. This is my house. We obey my rules when I'm here. So go ahead and read 71.
Sure. Text 71. Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumam charati nihas nispriha nirmamo nirahankara sa shantim adikachati. Synonyms. Vihaya, giving up. Kaman, material desires for sense gratification. Yahu, sarvan, all. Pumam, a person. Charati, lives. Nisparha, desireless. Nirmama, without a sense of proprietorship. Nirahankara, without false ego. Sa, he. Shantim, perfect peace. Adhigachati, attains. Translation. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace.
Yeah, this is a great verse too. If you want to learn how to attain peace, it's kind of ironic because the whole this whole book was spoken on a battlefield, and Krishna wanted Arjuna to engage in war.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's kind of like a little bit ironic. But, the way to attain peace is to kill all the other guys, because they're the ones that were bothering the earth. The earth was complaining, and they went to Śikṣāṣtaka, and they petitioned Vishnu and said, don't worry about it. I'll come down there. And, look out, demons. They're coming down there, Krishna says, to annihilate the demons and to protect the devotees and establish religious principles. And that's what he did. And but that's the way to attain peace. Sometimes peace is, comes through violent means. Sometimes it's necessary, And guys like Mahatma Gandhi, he used the Bhagavad-gītā as, he said in his nonviolent, what do you call it? His idealistic nonviolence of civil disobedience.
Passive non-resistance.
He was saying that the Bhagavad-gītā is actually peace, and Prabhupada said that's nonsense. It's not about, it's not about like some kind of material type of consideration that everybody can just be peaceful and hold hands and kumbaya, No, Krishna comes down and he kicks ass. But Lord Chaitanya does the same thing in this age. He kills the demonic mentality. And that's the amazing thing. All the Pathan soldiers were ready to kill him, but he just like preached to them, and then they just all became devotees. They became mendicants. All these violent Muslim meat eaters, they became mendicants, just as a result of Lord Chaitanya preaching to them. So Lord Chaitanya is, if you take shelter of Lord Chaitanya and take shelter of this philosophy and really concentrate on Krishna, you can develop a steady idea of who Krishna is. And then you can also have that effect on people. It's possible. Anyway, purport. To become desireless does not mean means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. See, that's the way to actually give up sense gratification. If you have any kind of addiction, like I used to be addicted to coffee, and I found it really hard to give it up. I was addicted to a lot of things, but I gave it all up. And then I finally gave up coffee, and it seemed like I couldn't go without it, to start my day or whatever. And then even as a devotee, even though I knew I wasn't supposed to do it, but I gave it up because I put Krishna in my mind and I just meditate on Krishna alone. If you think of Krishna, you can give up anything. If you concentrate on Krishna and just be satisfied with meditating on him, because he's got the higher taste. He really does. You don't want anything else, if you just focus on Krishna consciousness, it's got everything. So to understand one's actual position as an eternal servant of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own Sanskrit satisfaction, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. It kind of like reminds me of kids, they ask them what, the mother or father tells them, do this or do that. And he said, why? He says, because I told you to, but that's the same thing. But Krishna, you do it out of love, and then Krishna will give you all the glory. All these soldiers were already killed, but Krishna wanted to give Arjuna the credit for it. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. And that's another thing I was thinking, who is enlivened to get up in the morning and just work for sense gratification? It's just everybody in the whole world is got a job, job, means just over broke, and they're working for their own sense gratification. They work hard day and night, and it's not very enlivening. But if you're working for a cause, if you're working for Krishna, you can do the same job, just do it for Krishna. What yat kroshi yat asnasi yat johosi dadasi yat. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give away or offer, or whatever austerities you perform, just do it for me, Krishna says. If you're working in a factory pressing buttons, Prabhupada says, press the button for Krishna. It's the same thing. You're doing the same thing, but you just have the different mentality, And if you do that, then everything changes. It kind of reminds me of this one little saying, or Emerson said this. He said, we're kind of like the man who lost his way in a snowstorm. And he died just 2 feet from his own cabin, right? We're like that in the material world. We're blinded by our own sense desires and all these different things that are happening in the material world. And our own desires are kind of like blinding us to our real self. And if we just, have a little bit of a change of consciousness and surrender to Krishna and know that he is our protector, that's even higher stage than actually. Shantaras is the beginning stage of devotional service. And then you have no material desires anymore. You get rid of all the material desires. And then you're attached to Krishna because, not in an intimate way, but you're just accepting that he's there, and you have kind of like an reverence, But that situation is the beginning of devotional service. And then from there you go on to, because he's so great, you want to serve him. And that's the beginning of a more intimate relationship. And it progresses step by step along the way. And then to servitorship, there's like 2 more things. It's like another thing besides getting rid of your own sense gratification and being attached to Krishna. You are also have a service attitude, and that's adding one more thing, of one more aspect of intimacy. And each rasa, as it goes up and up, like fraternity, that adds, like the coward boys are thinking that just Krishna's the same, they're kind of bewildered by the Krishna's potency covers over, and it gets rid of the awe and reverence, and they think, Krishna, you think you're a big guy? I'm gonna beat you, and then you're gonna have to ride on my back. They used to play like that. But so when you get that like equity like that, and it keeps on getting further and further, on each step, then Vatsalya, that is where you think of Krishna as your son, and you have to maintain Krishna. And that just like is the experts call this kind of rasa delving into an ocean. It's like Krishna, all his childhood pastimes, there are many devotees besides Yashoda and Nanda and Devaki and Vasudeva. Devaki and Vasudeva, not so much, because they had awe and reverence for Krishna. But Yashoda and Nanda, they didn't have, even though Krishna displayed the universal form in his mouth in front of Mother Yashoda, she's like, at first she was astonished, but then she just thought to herself, well, he's my child, and I need to feed him. So, she let him suck her breast. So that's like, she forgot completely about the whole thing, and she said, oh, whatever it is, I don't care. He's my baby. I have to take care of him, and that's just so way beyond even fraternity. And then, of course, the most intimate stage is the Madhurya Ras, where you have all the previous aspects, but you have it's more intense, and there's more of an intimate relationship, and you actually give your own body to Krishna, and that is even that, of course, is like a higher, even higher than Vatsalya. But where am I here? Okay, so for himself, Krishna had no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought. For himself, Arjuna, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Real desirelessness is desire for satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. Living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna, Isharavashtamidam Sarvam, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna and spiritual identity, and the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. The peace formula is you don't claim proprietorship over anything, you don't think that you're the enjoyer, and you don't think that you're the best friend of everyone. You know that Krishna is the best friend of everyone, and you can only be friends with like a certain limited number of friends. Like tonight, we'll probably have maybe 4 or 6 people over here, because I don't have any friends. But you can have, Krishna has unlimited friends. We used to have Christmas parties over here with our family, the local family, my mother's parents, but her mother's dead, her father's dead, and therefore there's no reason for the families to get together anymore. She was never that close to her sister, but yeah, it's just the way things go, But we have our devotee friends, and it's really nice to go to the temple, to the program, and see them, and hang out with them, hear the holy name and stuff like that. Why don't you read text 72?
Sure.
The last one.
Brahmastiti pratham nainam prapya vimuhyati titvasyamanta kalepi amanirvanam urchati. Synonyms: Esha, this; Brahmi, spiritual; Sthita, situation; Partha, O son of Prtha; Na, never; Inam, this; Prapya, achieving; Vimuyati, one is bewildered; Stritva, being situated; Asyam, in this; Antakale, at the end of life; Api, also; Ramanirvanam, the spiritual kingdom of God; Urchati, one attains. Translation: this is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God.
Why don't you read the first paragraph too, because it kind of goes
Sure.
into it.
Purport. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Katvanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life. But the Bhagavad-gītā teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord. Since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God.
Yeah, Brahma Nirvana, that's even, that's not like merging into the existence of Krishna or Brahman. Even the Mayavadis want to do that, but I mean, that's a stage of self-realization, but we have to go beyond that and develop a relationship with Krishna. The first stage is Shantaras, and then having attachment to Krishna and detachment from material things. And then when you actually start serving Krishna, then that begins your actual, that's kind of like the Shantaras is in between spiritual and material. You know, it's a kind of like a limbo. You're not really even Brahman realized. You have an idea of Brahman consciousness, or maybe some idea of the Paramatma. But when you're serving, when you have a service relationship with Krishna, then you're actually on the transcendental plane. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmastiti means, quote, not on the platform of material activities, end quote. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad-gītā as the liberated stage. Saganan samatityaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, Brahmastiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized the second chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā as being the contents for the whole text. Just like you said, you know, the introduction is kind of like an introduction, or it contains everything. Similarly, the second chapter also contains everything, being the context for the whole text. In the Bhagavad-gītā, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the context for the complete text. So, done. You have any thoughts or realizations about the second chapter?
I mean, all throughout, I mean, there's the ongoing, like, just getting the sense that, like, the process and the goal are, you know, almost identical in some respects, because when you're, you know, acting in devotional service, and I think it really confirms it here in this final purport, you know, when you're acting in devotional service, you know, fully surrendered, you actually are, for all intents and purposes, in the spiritual kingdom already. I mean, you've spiritualized, you've Krishnized your life, and so those actions that would normally or would seem material are actually now, you know, spiritual in designation. And you know, and then the material impediments that would, you know, normally arise from material behavior, you know, are no longer there, because, you know, they've been kind of replaced by the, you know, the higher taste that, you know, of Krishna consciousness. And so, like, you know, with that last bit in the purport there, you know, just, you know, where was it?
Let me look at it.
Yeah, so there's no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. And so, like, you know, when one is doing the process and, or if one can perfectly do the process, like the process itself is the goal. It's like,
Yeah. Well, it says, when you're talking about like sacrifices, like a Vedic sacrifice, you have the fire, you have the offering, you have the performer, you have the fire itself, and you have Vishnu, who accepts the results of sacrifice. All these things become one entity. They become transcendental when you in the process of sacrifice, everything becomes Krishnaized, as you say. So when you're serving Krishna, then all your activities, even though they may appear to be material activities, because you have that attitude of attachment to Krishna and detached from matter, you become you actually transcend the mode of goodness and become spiritualized, and therefore none of the material things that used to bother you can't. It's like the snake that has been defanged. The senses will no longer have any poisonous effect, and you won't be bothered by any material situation, because
I guess that relates back to, with what was said, earlier, with Arjuna no longer having the same obligations, that he would normally have to, fulfill. That as a, with his relationships to family and to kinsmen and so forth, because he's surrendering to the will of Krishna, that supersedes all of the other kind of, material or occupational or familial responsibilities that he has, because those no longer apply, because when he's fully surrendered under Krishna and doing Krishna's will, those are merely material considerations.
Yeah, in the material world, everyone has obligations. You have obligation to your parents, you have obligation to your educators, you have obligation to your boss, you have obligation to the forefathers, you have obligation to the saints and sages and everything, and you have obligation to the government. But if you're Krishna conscious, you don't have obligation to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
All you do is surrender to Krishna, and all these other obligations are completely eradicated. And not only that, all your sinful activities from your previous lives that have built up through since time immemorial are also eradicated. So it's a pretty good deal. I mean, if you really think about it,
buy one, get all.
Yeah, it's like the Amazon of shopping for spiritual things. You just get everything in one purchase, and it doesn't cost anything. Free shipping too.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to do, all you have to do is change your consciousness a little bit, and instead of serving your own senses, serve Krishna's senses. Krishna is a person, and if we develop a relationship with him and think of him, then we'll serve his senses. And that's what the gopis did. They were just worried about what Krishna was feeling. They're trying to make him happy. So it's just a little change in consciousness, but Krishna is the soul of our soul. So if we actually change our consciousness to serving our own senses and our body, who we think mistakenly is us, we're missing the target. We're trying to serve our senses, but we don't even know who we are. We're not the body, and if we think we're the body, then we're serving our false ego. We're serving an illusion if we think we're the body, and they're serving in the senses of this body, and it's just temporary anyway, and it causes all kinds of misery. But if we serve Krishna, who is the soul of our souls, that's like feeding the bird it's actually freeing the bird in the cage. If you just polish your bird cage and you don't feed the bird inside, the bird's going to die. But if you take care of the bird and let it go, the bird can fly as high as it wants, and it no longer is contained within this material world. So that's real freedom, even though we have to be controlled, whether we're in the material world or in the spiritual world. But it's better to be controlled by Krishna, because Krishna is freedom. Because when you're controlled by Krishna, then you're choosing to to understand what he wants us to do. And there's not a word in this book that's bad for you. And the spiritual master is confirming what the books say, and Krishna is within our hearts, and he's like a double checking, you know, like a vetting of this. And so when we actually abide by those two things, Guru and Krishna, then we have total freedom. But otherwise, we're completely controlled by the material energy. Even though people think they're free, they're not free. You know, Krishna or Prabhupada used to say, if you think you're free, you're fool number one. And that's why it's so amazing of the whole idea of democracy. You know, everybody's saying by the people, for the people, of the people. They're not in control. The modes of material nature are in control. And you know, unless the leaders are surrendered to Krishna, it's like the whole society is like on a boat without a rudder, and it's just going to end up in the rocks. Especially nowadays, it's just really scary what's going on in you know, I was reading, have you ever heard of Deva Amrita Swami?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be his personal servant, but he wrote a book recently in 2015 about it called Hiding in Unnatural Happiness.
I've read that.
And there he talks about the decline of democracy in the world. Democracy, even though it's a faulty concept, you know, unless you're on a transcendental plane, it's not going to work, you know, because as Prabhupada said, it's demon crazy. You have fourth class men picking 10th class men who are greedy, and they're only in it for their own, you know, power and purposes, you know. And so, but you know, in the previous ages, they had responsible rajarshis. Rajarshi means saintly king. Raja means king, and rishi means sage. And so when a government's guided by a rajarshi, rajarshi doesn't work alone either. He always takes advice from brahmanas. Brahmana is the intelligent class, and the king doesn't do anything unless he's guided. But we have all these puffed up politicians. They're just doing whatever they want, and just for their own power, just to get reelected. And they're actually destroying democracy. I mean, democracy is a faulty system. It must be much better, but with a rajarshi, but they don't have that system anymore. So you got to work with what you can. So the better thing would be to elect people, for the people to become Krishna conscious, then elect a leader that would be Krishna conscious in the democracy. That's the way democracy could work. But if you have a bunch of fourth class men picking 10th class men, especially if they have a tendency to pick somebody who's you know, inclined towards authoritarianism, like authoritative rule, then you're in a lot of trouble, because then you have like really horrible kings like Venu in the Bhagavatam. You know, he was horrible, and the Brahmanas, you know, they usually don't get into politics, you know, but they had to kill him. They cursed him to die, and then they took his limbs somehow, and they churned his limbs, and they produced a personality of Godhead. We don't have brahmanas like that in this age, you know. So, you know, it's just it's a horrible situation. And the only problem is, you know, in America, if America becomes an authoritarian state, which I think it might become, especially if the Republicans take over in 2022, they're going to get rid of the electoral system, and they'll still have a voting system, but they won't count. You know, it's just like whatever they want, whoever they want to put in control, they're rigging the elections right now, even in Pennsylvania. They're talking with the you know, the Republican electoral machine, and they're putting electors in there, and they're rigging the system so that who counts the votes, and they can fire anybody, they can change the rules. They're doing that all over the country right now. So it really, the will of the people, you know, even they say by the people, for the people. It's not going to be that anymore. It's like whoever they choose to be the king of the world, that's who's going to be the king, you know. So, I don't talk about politics that much, but it's a very disturbing situation. There was a piece by Barton Gellman from Atlantic Magazine who's talking about, they're really digging in now, and there's tens of millions of people who think 68% of all Republicans believe that Biden was an elected president, and 28% of all Americans believe that violence is necessary in order to restore our country. So I feel like between 2022 and the next election, there's going to be blood in the streets at every major city. If there's like a contested election, if it's close or whatever, it's going to be crazy, and I just emailed my mentor, Dave Amritaswamy, and I said, in 1980s, he predicted the economic collapse, and I told him in 1988, he said something about that. And then of course, in 2009, it happened, the Great Recession. And then in this case, he predicted, that in the book about democracy waning all over the world. And, whatever America does, the whole world follows. And so it's just becoming, the people that are that manifest they're making the plans, they would prefer to have a dictatorship or an autocracy, authoritarian rule, because democracy is very complicated. It works if you can make it work. But that's why that Biden had this whole summit, to talk to like 100 different countries, and try, because if everybody sticks together, then democracy might work. But if you have a whole bunch of different countries that are surrounding a certain country and they're all authoritarian, then that one's going to fall. Like in Czechoslovakia, Czechoslovakia fell to authoritarian rule. But it's kind of scary, to tell you the truth. I told Dave Amritaswamy, he lives in New Zealand, and New Zealand is not at all like America. And I was talking to my wife, if stuff hits the fan in the next couple of years, we're thinking about actually moving, maybe to Canada, maybe to Australia. But Australia is an awesome country. They had some gun violence there. They got rid of the guns. Can you imagine that happening in America? No, never. And they're actually have a bill to get rid of cigarettes in the whole country of New Zealand. And so how awesome is that? But that would never happen in America. Good old America. But I think we're out of time here. I was just wasting time running my mouth. Do you have any other questions or comments or anything?
No.
About the state of the world? It's in sad shape. It's Kali Yuga, it's on steroids right now. But God help us. We have to, I think the devotees have to actually think about this. I was talking to David Miranda. I said, we have to actually start thinking about these things and preparing, because, you can't just let it, be in our little bubble, our devotee bubble, and think, we have to actually preach. We're not a bunch of wussies either. We could stay anywhere we want, but we have to figure out the best situation to spread Krishna consciousness. They used to say that if there was a World War III or something, it'd be great for preaching. It's horrible for the human beings, but it might be good for preaching. Who knows? People would at least wake up to their suffering situation. Something to think about. Anyway, thank you very much. I will see you on Monday, hopefully.
Good.
Talk to you later, Mike. Thanks.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.